storytelling. My book, Short Dark Tales for Long Dark Nights.
Sure.
I used to produce it as a scroll version so people could buy it and literally just sit and read it and tell the stories. But there's a couple of the stories in there that are actually based on truth, things that happened to me. The House, which is about a cottage in Warwickshire that I came across when I was working on duty at the time as a police motorcyclist. And quite an amazing place. And well, you'd have to read the book to see all of it, but that's actually based on a true experience where I parked the motorbike up. It was misty and foggy, and there was like by the place I parked, there was a gate, very overgrown, and I could see a cottage in the mist in the distance. So I went through. I thought, oh, you never know when you might find a tea stop. So I had a wander through, and I went into the garden at the front. It was an old orchard, and there was very old apple trees in there. It was so old that there'd been obviously at some stage, a hammock hung between two of the trees, and the chain was still there, and the bark had grown over it, over the chain.
Sure.
So I'd been there a long time. Back of the house, very dilapidated, a broken window, very dusty. I looked in the window and very gloomy inside. Some dusty furniture in there, and I thought, oh, this looks interesting. And I walked around the side of the house and to the front of the house. No, sorry, that's actually the back of there. This was the front. I walked round to the back of the house, and the mist had cleared, and there was the most beautiful country garden there with vegetables and flowers and beans growing up poles, and it was absolutely lovely. Lovely black soil had all been looked after. And I thought, well, that's a bit strange compared to the front of the house. So I knocked on the door, and I mean, the cottage must have been hundreds of years old, and the door opened, and a little old lady, dressed in dark clothes, came to the door, and it was very gloomy inside. And she, oh, hello, young man. I said, oh, I've just because been burglaries in the area. I said, I've just come round to see everything. So I noticed a broken window at the front, and I wondered if, oh, no, there's a broken window. Anyway, she invited me in. A beautiful old, sort of very, very old-fashioned kitchen with stone floors and a rocking chair, and a range fire, and that very gloomy inside, and a table with a big cloth. And she made me a cup of tea and gave me some Victoria sponge cake, which is my favourite. And I spent quite a while there just chatting to her. And anyway, everything was fine. Off I went back away, and I thought a couple of months later, I thought, oh, I'll call in again, get another cup of tea, see the old lady's all right. Parked up, went down the path, no house, gone,
Right.
flattened. Oh, uh, you know, and a sign up saying plot for sale or something like that. So that was what actually happened, and then I wove that experience into a story where I return later. I find that the house has been empty for 50 years because the lady died
Sure.
50 years before.
Sure.
I'm speaking to a farmer there, and he said, I know, because it was my birthday. I was 10 years old, and I went round to see her, because she always had some cake for me. And I found her dead in the chair, and it's the first dead person I've ever seen and all that. And I said, well, that must have been quite recently. And he said, oh, no. He said, I remember it because it was my 10th birthday, and I'm 16 now. It was 50 years ago. And it turns out, I find out she died 50 years to the date that I called in.
So you went, yeah.
You know?
Solid.
So bringing the two things together made a story. And another one, Leave Her Alone, was an incident I was called to as a police officer when I was on the area cars, to a fairly new estate in Castle Bromwich. a domestic disturbance. It was about 12 o'clock at night. Oh, you just, on a Saturday, you just dread it, you know. You're going to have a couple of drunk people fighting and everything's horrible. Anyway, I turned up, the road was in darkness, at the cul-de-sac type thing, and except for one house where all the lights were on. Oh, that's it. And it was the one. Anyway, knocked the door and came to the door and said, "Oh, really pleased to see you. You know, I'm glad you've come." I went and sat down. And I noticed the house was like things were jumbled around, like it'd been not ransacked, but things had been moved. And anyway, the story they told me, which they swore was true, was the fact that they were being haunted, and they'd come back, found it like this. House was locked, the windows were locked, the doors were locked, and there was a picture on the floor, and scrawled on the back in pencil was the words, "Leave her alone." Now, all of that is true. And then I wove it into a story for the book. So I changed little bits like that. So that, if you can give that authenticity to it, I think it's good. But right, back on the subject. I can edit all that out. Right, one thing I noticed and I enjoyed in your show, in the Dracula, Mystery of Dracula, was your control of the audience.
Sure.
Yeah, you know, any volunteers, please? And none of this hesitancy. You know, it was, oh yeah, stand up. No, I'm not joking. You know, stand up.
Sure.
And that, and so you're imposing yourself on them without being cruel or nasty, but it gets them. There's no hesitancy, and they then become part of the show. You know?
Sure.
So what's your thoughts on that, getting volunteers?
I mean, I think the audience want a leader, don't they? You know, like it's not like it's not an experience whereby you're saying to the audience, "I want you to dictate what's happening right now." You know, like they're on a roller coaster or a ghost train, if you want to call it that, and I'm the conductor, and so I think, you know, I mean, I've got an advantage, you know, I've been doing like drama and stuff from when I was very, very young. And I did stand-up comedy for quite a long time when I lived in Liverpool after I graduated from drama school. And when you're doing stand-up comedy, you have to, right? Like you've got to dominate the space a bit, because otherwise they will attack you. Well, not attack you, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, you don't want to open yourself up for the possibility that someone will say something funnier than anything
funnier than you.
And it'll kill you, right? It'll kill the whole like contract you've made, you know? So you've got to stand there and like never give an audience member a microphone. That's death. Like never ask an audience member an open-ended question, you know, like, because otherwise they will talk and you look like a dick if you shut them down because you asked the question, right? Like as a general rule, you want to be super. I think the way you treat it is like if you're, you know, front of house at an attraction or something, it's like you never want to be rude. You never want to like be like overbearing. You just want to be clear, concise, authoritative without being. I think there's a way to be authoritative without coming across like some people. I think when they're given like a smidge of power, abuse that, you know. And I think it'd be easy to do that on stage. Whereas like if you just go, my job is to give the majority of the people in this room a good experience. And if sometimes that means that person there, they just need to be made clear, hey, like stop talking or let's keep moving or whatever, that's fine, you know? So yeah, and I think that just comes with practice, you know what I mean? Like it comes with practice. It comes with not being afraid of like, because don't get me wrong, I've definitely said something that will offend people. I've gone too far. I've put myself in situations where, you know, I've tried to make a joke or something funny, and even I know that whatever I said, you know, came back to them too hard, or it just didn't land. Like the thing I meant to be funny or whatever didn't work. And so the audience, we can all feel like when someone says something that's a bit uncomfortable. And because I'm the one talking, it's likely to be me. So you're going to make mistakes. But I'd rather, you know, risk that than people feel like,
lose control.
Just lose control.
Yeah. When we were doing our haunted house nights, I think we were at Barrow Court, and we started off selling tickets to the public, which is, I'm interested in the way you do this. But I then moved to doing corporate.
Sure.
Because instead of selling 50 tickets for the haunted house night, I sold one event. So it was easy.
100%. Yeah,
and
sure.
And the admin are collecting the money and everything. And we got a corporate do on one night, and Gordon Astley, who was theatrical director and the butler or the MC, we had a woman who was just, and it was spoiling it for everybody.
Yeah.
It was just distracting. Anyway, at one stage, she made some comment, and Gordon stopped what he was doing, looked directly at her and said, "Madam, you've just missed the ideal opportunity. Madam, you've just missed the ideal opportunity to keep your mouth shut."
Sure.
She shut up, everyone laughed at her, we never heard her again. But, we didn't hear from her, it sounds like we killed her.
Yeah.
You know,
but this is it. It's like whenever you're in a situation like that, it's a risk, isn't it? Because you can say something and ideally they'll take the hint. But sometimes, especially if they've been drinking, or they're just a certain kind of person, like as a rule, I will always avoid conflict unless it's absolutely necessary. And then when something like that does happen, when someone is being intentionally disruptive, I've told people to leave and stuff, which is never a situation you want to be in. But as long as it's done in a way where everyone is aware that I'm not losing control of the situation, it's not me going, "Oh man, I'm desperate," and like, "Oh, you know," it's me going, "Okay, this will continue after you leave." All right. And then the moment they've gone, removing the awkwardness from the room as quickly as possible. You know what I mean? And making everyone go, "Okay, that had to happen. That was unfortunate that we were all part of that, but that's incredibly rare." And I do think it is more rare in my scenario versus a corporate scenario, because it's the difference between, 9 times out of 10 in the corporate scenario, everyone there feels incumbent to be there sometimes. Like if it's a party or like some kind of event, the level of investment from the majority of individuals is quite low, because they've turned up. Whereas everyone in my show, and this is a privilege, don't get me wrong, I appreciate this isn't convenient, has paid for a ticket individually, has chosen to be there, has made a big effort to be in that room. So they want this to be great.
They're backing you because
100%. Their investment is significantly higher. And if you can create that atmosphere, it's just easier. It's way easier. It's a big part of the reason that I stopped doing like close-up magic and stuff, because 9 times out of 10 with that scenario, I am incumbent on the audience, and my job is to then make them comfortable with me invading their space. Whereas if they're coming into my space voluntarily, it's easier. It's a harder market for sure.
Like a restaurant, and that at tables, right. Another point I wanted to make was that I particularly noticed the fact there's light and shade, and there was humour and darkness, but there was plenty of room for humour in the show. People laughing, and that's important. You can't, if it's all dark, it's just depressing, and the light makes the darkness darker.
Sure.
So that those moments of lightness with the smiles and the laughs, good. I enjoyed that. That was
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Now, I'm just going to mention something there that occurred to me. I've been making a couple of notes here. Have you seen the film Nosferatu?
As in the original? I haven't, as a matter of fact.
Right. Well, you can get it on DVD, or perhaps it's streaming now. It was a rip-off of Dracula.
Of course. Yeah. I'm very familiar with the movie. I've not seen it.
Stole the ideas. One of the brilliant scene is when Nosferatu's coming up the stairs.
Sure.
You don't see him. You see his shadow.
The shadow. Yeah, I'm familiar with the scene.
And just looking at you there, the shadow that's being cast there, exactly. That's exactly what it reminded me.
Yeah, I planned it. planned it, then
very,
that.
very clever. You see, minimal setting, maximum impact. Right. Who do you do all the? I mean, I used to have Gordon Astley boy. He was um, he he was talk show host on BBC Radio, various radio
Sure.
stations. So he was very, very used to speaking off the cuff. Very, very quick-witted, very good at that. He also, when I did the Black Magic Theatre show part, he would always stand at the back and watch what I was doing. And if he couldn't hear me, he'd just do that. And I knew I'd got to raise my voice. If I was doing an effect or something with props and he thought they couldn't see them, he'd just do that. So I'd know that if he wanted them to see something, I'd have to raise it up. Which was, and he also was very good at saying, that's a brilliant effect, but drop it because it doesn't quite fit, or it's a bit too long, or it's not as good as the others. Editing the show. Do you have anyone that does that for you, or do you do that yourself?
Yeah, I've definitely got. I've got people who operate in a different, probably a slightly different capacity to what you're specifically suggesting. I work with my sister. I've worked with my sister for years now, and we perform a lot of the shows together. Really, she's never on stage. She'll be like in the tech booth or something. But you know, if the tech booth is visible and she is visible, which is sometimes true in like Edinburgh, we're aware that, you know, because people can see her, she will have to react in certain ways to certain things to create a sort of believability and stuff. Yeah, I definitely have that. I do think I've got an advantage of having, you know, a sort of quite a significant theatrical background from being quite young. Like I studied drama at GCSE and then at A level, then I went to acting school, and I've done plays. I've just done plays like since I was a kid, and so I always understood, and I'm constantly told that I talk too loud. So projection has never been a particular issue of mine. And I do think I've got a general awareness of being on stage because I've been on stage a lot in the context outside of magic, right?
Yeah.
But I do have my sister who is a constant presence when I'm doing the shows and will say, hey, this works, this doesn't, let's play around with this.
I'm sure being your sister, she'll give you...
Oh, it's terrible. It's horrendous. Yeah, 100%. There's no filter.
We were at a corporate gig one time in a big hotel. We were booked doing I was doing tarot reading. I think Gordon was doing runes or something. And there was a close-up magician who'd done something on the stage. And we were watching. And he was rubbish. It wasn't very good. Anyway, afterwards we're in the bar, and having something to eat. And this chap came, I knew Gordon, and he said, oh, no. He said, what do you think of the act? And Gordon said, oh, it's very good, yeah, I really enjoyed it, it's great. And off he went. And I looked at Gordon and said, you didn't like it? Why did you say that? He said, because I don't like him.
Sure, yeah.
and so, that, apart from your sister, you would never ask your mum, what do you think of that? Because they're never going to say, it wasn't very good, you know. Yeah. It's like the pictures your children draw, you know, from the school.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Goes on the fridge.
I think
it's important to get that feedback, and it's important.
I think it is. I think it's also important to like build your own sense of, because ideally you want to be able to do it yourself as much as possible, right? And I think that requires building a good sense of awareness. And I think a big part of that is I see a lot of theater. Like I will go and see as much theater as I can. And I I tend to watch like even like movies and TV shows. I don't want to say I watch them with a critical eye. It's not like I'm sitting there with a pen and paper, but I am very aware of, like at the moment I'm writing a mystery. And so it's about looking and going, oh, right. Like I'm paying attention to when clues are revealed and the way in which they're portrayed. You know what I mean? Like the different techniques you can use to highlight these things. And that all definitely feeds into the performance of what do I need to show? What do I need to not show? When do I talk big? When do I talk small? And all of those things. So I think just developing a sort of theatrical literacy, or fluency, as Joshua J would say, is a big part of that.
I mean, I'm getting from the conversation, I agree with, so much of what you're saying, that the theatre and the performance aspect. Now, that's what I always enjoy and always enjoyed. But I think it's something that a lot of normal magicians lack. They're interested in the trick. And I use the word trick specifically. They're interested in the trick. That's what they want to know. It's how the trick works. There's a new trick come out. Oh, I'll get that. And it might be sleight of hand. It might be self-working. And I don't do sleight of hand, by the way. The biggest thing I ever do is a double lift. And even that I work on. But because I want it's the performance I'm interested in, not the how and why. And I think I mentioned yesterday too when we spoke, when I used to do lectures at magic clubs, after I'd done the Black Magic Theatre show, I'd say, look, we can either talk about the theory of the magic and the performance, or I can tell you how the tricks work. No one ever said, oh, can we talk about the theory? Which is what interests me.
100%.
They always want to say, but I think I mentioned in my interview, one of the scariest performances I ever did was to the Magic Circle in London. I went down to do the Black Magic Theatre show and the lecture down there. And I mean, me, just little old me. And I'm there and I think, God, there's loads of professional magicians and everything. Anyway, I did it in the accent and I did the full performance. And what I'd say afterwards, I'd say, look, I'm going to try something really difficult now. I'm going to try and do this in a Birmingham accent.
Yeah.
Just to, to practice. So anyway, and one of my effects, Sign of Satan, it's my favourite all-time effect. The one I would take, if I could only have one effect, it'd be Sign of Satan. And I didn't know this at the time. I mean, I did the effect and afterwards I'm explaining. And in the audience is William Oliver Wallace, Ali Bongo.
Oh, wow. Yeah, sure. Right?
And the effect Sign of Satan is based on Fred the Red. It was Ali Bongo or William Oliver Wallace that invented Fred the Red. I had no idea I was performing. And he'd come up to me. That was really good. He enjoyed it, And what amazed me was, because they were so interested in the show and in the theatre, some of the things that I was doing, they're so simple. I thought this professional, they'll just laugh at me. They won't be fooled. They'll think I'm rubbish. Nobody was, what I did fooled it because they were more interested in the show and in the theatre, And to me, that's what it's about. So your training as an actor, then, you feel, has definitely helped you.
I mean, yeah, like that's, a magician is an actor playing the part of a magician, right? And anyone who says that quote it's one of the best quotes that's ever been written about magic. And some people say it's taken out of context. Even if it is, it's better to think about it in the way that I'm presenting it there. Like, a magician is definitively an actor playing the part of a magician. You know what I mean? It's like, or you're a juggler. You're one of the two, right? You're either doing a demonstration of skill or you're doing something which is theatrical by nature. You know what I mean? And I think the thing about a demonstration of skill is that kind of fits a lot of the time. If you're going to do some card tricks, nothing wrong with card tricks, right? Nothing wrong there, sure. I love card tricks. I'm a hobbyist as well as a professional, and I do things as a hobby that I don't necessarily do, professionally. But I do card tricks professionally, not like in these shows, I just mean I used to. But people can say, if you say, how'd you do that? People might go, oh, well, it's sleight of hand, right? And that's as good an explanation as they need, right? Because they don't know the double lift, they don't know the riffle force, they don't know all of those specifics, but they can blanket go, that was sleight of hand, right? Mm-hmm. And that's fine. But what they then will often say is, oh, do you know, that's so, like, they the compliment they give the magician is one of, you are skillful, right? Like you have a high level of, skill in what you're doing. And what they mean is the mechanical skill,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, which is fine. That is different to what I want to do, because most of the time when people see, media that they will often say is their favorite. Like if you say to someone, what is your favorite example of media? They're going to tell you the name of a movie or the name of a book or the name of a video game or something like that, all of which have narrative stories, right? There's a lot of skill goes into creating those things, like creating the animation or the practice of the acting. Learning all of the lines is a skill, None of those things come up in the audience's mind, because what happens is the narrative takes them on, right? Like they are fully immersed in the experience of the thing. And so I feel like you almost never hear, Ian McKellen go, oh, the skill involved. It's like, wasn't that great? They talk about just going, wasn't that? Do you see what I mean? I'm not really being particularly clear, to be fair, but I do think there is a definite separation between I am just doing something that is a skillful demonstration versus I'm taking you on a journey here, And I'm not necessarily saying one is better than the other. There is definitely a space, a really good space, and a very profitable, marketable space for skill.
It's interesting, Sue, that you presumably then you've written your show, and then you think, well, where can I do this? So you've got to book a theatre, and then you've got to market it, and you do all yourself.
Sort of.
Yeah. So it's a gamble every time, because if you don't fill those seats,
for sure. 100%. But so first off, there's things you can do to like mitigate that, right? So one of the things that people do is work with already existing intellectual properties. So like the new show I'm doing is Charles Dickens' The Haunted House, right? Now, and I'm doing it at Christmas time. So Charles Dickens, tick. The Haunted House, well, that tells you roughly everything you need to know there. And Christmas time. Christmas ghost stories are definitely, there's a cultural element of that. And even if you haven't heard of it, the cultural element of that in this country, especially among theatre goers. So really, I'm trying to stack the odds in my favor as much as possible. And also covering it in reviews. I'm lucky enough that I've been going long enough. I've gotten a lot of good reviews, and I can easily say, even if I don't have reviews for this particular show, I can put, here are praise for previous shows and show, So what they look at is go, Charles Dickens, spooky, Christmas, and it's going to probably be good because look at all these reviews the guy's got. You're right, like there's a risk, but you want to do as much as you can in terms of marketing to heavily mitigate that risk. And usually, if I'm pitching a show to a theatre, which is what you're doing, because like, you can do a straight hire and hire the theatre, but that will be very, very expensive. Certain theatres less than others, for sure. And as it happens, one of the theatres I have a very good relationship with is a straight hire, but it's quite reasonably priced. Whereas if you're doing something in like London or something, unless you've got a crazy budget, you're not going to hire that. Oh, sorry, I'm playing with the microphone. You're not going to hire that theatre. You're going to be, the theatre will book you usually on the basis of a ticket split, where it's say 70-30 or 60-40 or something in your favor. So you'll take an amount of tickets. That is the theatre looking at your show going, I think we will sell. Like that is the theatre vetting you. So you've already got a little bit of, the theatre thinks that you're going to do well based on what they already think is marketable in their space. That's not always correct. A lot of theatres, I will say, theatres are all run individually and independently, and one theatre might be brilliantly run. But I work heavily with a theatre that is ran by amateur dramatists, right? Volunteers, amateur dramatists. And it is significantly better run, and I have made significantly more money there than I have at theatres that are ran professionally, because those theatres are often employed by people who are often quite young, and have an interest in the arts, but don't necessarily have a good sense of business or the foundation of understanding what it is to run, like what the mark. I often hear some theaters go, oh, our audience, or, oh, well, our audience. And I'm like, guys, you all run theaters. people who go to the theatre are kind of one audience. I mean, I get that, you know, maybe you're in an area with a lot of students and you might have that market and that's more accessible. But at the same time, a theatre audience is kind of a broad. A lot of theatre audiences are going to enjoy classics more than exclusively moviegoers do, right? So
one of the things with Dr. Natalie, with Natalie, my daughter, was making theatre more exclusive. In fact, her PhD was based on at the Birmingham Rep and how them making it more exclusive to minority groups that wouldn't normally.
Sure, more accessible. You might mean, yeah.
Well, we've had the warning notice come up. We're about to get shut off again. I'd like to call it a day for now, and then we can arrange to have another chat, because it's. I mean, I don't know whether the audience will enjoy it, but I tell you what, I have. It's been great.
Me too. Well, I mean, if you wanted, you could always upload this and call it part 1, and then see if there's any.
Well, this is part 2, remember, because we've already.
Oh yeah, sure. Well, you could edit those together and call them part 1.
There'll be a whole channel. Yeah, lovely. Okay, all the best. It's been great talking to you.
A pleasure.
Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much. Thanks very much for taking time out of your day to speak to me.
Oh, thank you, man. Like 100%. All right, cool. Well, you have a great day, and I'll speak to you when I speak to you. All right.
Bye.
See you, hyena. That is terrifying.
Bye then.